kind of as a quick tip addendum to what we covered in the last movie, I want to show you a little bit about the issues pertaining to importing a Photoshop document that already has layer styles in it. Whenever you import a composition, you have this option to import editable layer styles or to merge those layer styles into footage. Now, the description is right here at the bottom, but this might not be as clear as it could be. And here's the deal, folks. If you import a PSD file with editable layer styles, then the Photoshop layer styles that you created in Photoshop will remain editable in After Effects. So your bevel and emboss, your drop shadow, your inner and outer glows, that type of thing, they'll all be editable, adjustable, animatable, and all of that here within After Effects. And because it's a straight transfer, there's really not any editing or adjusting that goes on in that process, and so they look exactly the same as they do in Photoshop. The problem with this is that if you're going to put those layers with the layer styles on them into 3D space and you want them to intersect one another, in other words, you want one of them to go in front of or behind another layer, they won't do that. So if you're doing very, very simple and basic 3D, then this option is probably the best choice. But if you're going to be doing any kind of 3D, you might want to consider merging the layer styles into footage. This is kind of like when you're in Photoshop and you merge the layer styles into itself so that they're basically collapsed, no longer editable. This is the same type thing in After Effects. And because this essentially makes it a regular flat layer, in other words, there's no drop shadow, it's just pixels that look like a drop shadow. You can't adjust the drop shadow anymore. Then you can fully use them 3D the same way you'd use any other 3D layer. But again, the downside is you can't edit those layer styles, and also they have a tendency to not transfer over as well. Usually it looks pretty good. So let's say you just had a drop shadow, it would probably look exactly the same. But if you have a lot of effects in that layer style, especially if you're using a lot of blend modes with the effects in that layer style, then I find that they don't carry over super accurately. Merging layer styles, in other words, doesn't always faithfully reproduce the same effect. Now, what I prefer to do is, because layer styles in After Effects are the same ones in Photoshop, if I'm making something in Photoshop and I know it's going over to After Effects, then I just won't apply any layer styles at all, and I'll apply them here in After Effects. Of course, you'd still have the 3D problem, but then you don't have to worry about which option to choose here. So, this is just a little quick tip about importing Photoshop documents with layer styles.